And, a lot of the satellite people that I was talking to, they said, oh, yeah, what you're trying to do probably isn't going to work. It's going to be too delayed and whatnot. And I mean, my theory was, well, can't we just throw it in an HSM, put the keys there, authenticate the keys on an interval, when we need to communicate throughout the network and then call that zero trust? Like, doesn't that meet the requirements for zero trust? And if it meets those requirements, can it use, post quantum encryption to communicate off of? And all like, now everyone that I'm talking to, the people that are like actually in the post quantum encryption world and the satellites and everything else, they're saying like, but yeah, that's totally doable. That's like totally possible. It's fascinating because like for 2 years, I was literally thinking, man, is this thing even going to work? And but it's fascinating to hear you explain it because that's literally what I'm going to be doing with encryption keys, just utilizing the HSM module that's already on there.
Yeah. So funny thing there. So if you've got a TPM, the TPM's is basically the gold standard. The downside with the TPM, and I'm going to forget the precise numbers, but it's very limited in bit rate. So I think the max bit rate you're going to push through a TPM is, I remember it was like 8 meg or like 40 meg or something like that, but it's pretty low. With that said, it's fast enough for you to use it to then generate short ephemeral session keys, and then like every now and then do like the stronger attestation. So like there's a lot of things you can do with TPM, but then like TrustZone gives you a lot. You're probably working on ARM, right? In that environment, ARM based Linux. I may know a little bit about this because of some of our newest customers.
Yeah, no, that's fascinating. It's interesting. I want to get your opinion on it, right? Because I remember in the first startup that I was a part of, I ran the DoD, the federal contracts that we had. And I was talking to my sales guy at the time. I asked him, I was like, well, how did we even like get into doing government contracts and whatnot? And he literally said it took 4 years to get the first one. And once you got the first one, like we got like 12 others in the same year, right? Because it's all about like the circle of trust. If you get into the circle of trust, everyone goes to you for that same thing. But if you can't get into one place, basically no one trusts you.
Yeah, it very much is all or nothing. And it works like that with mission partners too, right? So like when you go over and you want to talk to MOD over in the UK or whatnot, usually the first question they ask is, who in the US DoD are you already working with? Right. So but like, let's zoom out, right? Like at the end of the day, no one has truly enough time to do all of the diligence that you would truly need to do to know everything on your own, right? So like reputation via peers that you trust it is how the world works, and it is a major influence point in decision making. I know I do that in some of the decisions that I make, right? If I don't really have time to think through everything, which is very often, it's like, well, who do I know that I actually trust for that area? So it makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great way to do it too. And that's why I always tell people to like really build up their network, like don't take it for granted, actually engage with people and whatnot
Mhm.
and build it up, right? Because you never know when an interesting opportunity is going to come along and you need to reach out to someone and say like, hey, is this a real thing? Does it work like this? All that sort of stuff. Kind of have a candid conversation with someone. I've had that so many times, even with the podcast, right? And I had like one of my first sponsors, they reached out to me and they were asking for some forums, and I reached out to like my business slash podcast mentor. And I was like, hey, what are they asking for? He goes, hey man, it means that like you're doing good. You need to provide them this. I just like couldn't figure it out. It's fascinating how that works.
Yeah, no, opportunity, a lot of opportunity is serendipitous. I ended up doing my PhD because of serendipity, right? Like at the right place, right time, met the right person. I ended up working for the General Keith Alexander through serendipity, right? Former director of the NSA. I ended up meeting Jim Clark through serendipity here at Beyond Identity. You need to be good at what you do, and hard work matters, but like luck does play a role.
Yeah, that's fascinating. There was a couple times where, I mean, you might be the fifth person that I've talked to that knows Keith Alexander, and I'm like looking for ways to bring him on. I'd love to have a conversation with him, and just like pick his brain for an hour. Like, the things that he has seen, and has knowledge of, like it's a different world, really, totally different, and it's so fascinating to me.
Think about it, right? The dual-hatted director of NSA and Cyber Command from 2004 to 2014. when the world literally transitioned from kind of pure cyber espionage to actual cyber physical attack. And then all of the world events that happened in that time frame as well. Like yeah, it's a pretty interesting. I mean, it's pretty interesting period in history. I mean,
Yeah.
as is today, but
Yeah, that time frame really changed everything with cybersecurity, forever. Because for a long time, and I read the book on Stuxnet, it's Zero Day, right, by
okay.
Kim Zaner.
Kim Weber.
And they mentioned in the book that cybersecurity and malware and worms, that's this whole world of malware never really crossed over into the physical realm until someone put together a piece of malware that made a generator operate at an RPM that it wasn't supposed to be operating at, and then it explodes over at Idaho National Laboratory, right? And there was some general there that was watching it, and I don't know if it was Keith Alexander, it was someone important was watching it, and it was like a light bulb, that came on in their head, and it was like, "Oh, this has real world implications." That was like the first time that they ever really, tested it out and whatnot. And then you fast forward, probably 10 years, right? And we saw it again with like Ukraine's power grid when Russia first invaded, right? The very first thing that they did was take over those computers, and they were operating the mouse and going through everything, shutting things
Sure.
down, and they had no clue what was happening. Luckily, because of how their power grid is, they're used to manually operating it. But God forbid that happens in America. There's like no chance that we would be able to efficiently and effectively manually start operating the power grid because our digital systems were taken over.
We when you think about cyber physical, it's pretty interesting, right? So like we've lived with denial of service for a long time, right? Like denial of service attacks, bot attacks. But imagine denial of service that it's more of like a cyber physical denial of service, right? Like if I've got bots, but my bots were light bulbs or my bots were smart devices, right? Smart toilets. If I flushed all the smart toilets of New York in one moment in time, could I actually physically stress the sewer system? I actually don't know the answer to that question. However, if I could turn on a current draw on a bunch of smart devices at the same amount of time, I do know that I could break fuses, right? And junction points. And then there's a question of how long does it take to replace those? What's the manufacturing pipeline even look like? So like I mean, the good news is we are taking these sorts of things seriously now, right? But the bad news, I guess, is just the asymmetry of cyber operations is in a highly connected modern economy. Everything is up for remote control, right?
Yeah. Yeah, everything is up for the taking. I feel like people don't really understand that, and even when you go to like I spent a long time in, internal security teams for companies.
Mhm.
And it seems like the only industry that like fully understands it and doesn't care how much money they have to throw at the problem is the banking industry.
Yeah, I was about to
Like,
say finance.
yeah, not even like the private investment firms, like they're still trying to, cut costs as much as they can and be as cost efficient. I was talking to some people at Bank of America because they were looking to bring me on